How's it going, everybody? JT here. Here we go for the 3rd of October, 2025. This is episode number 127, a long time coming. Our technical interviewer, LogrisTheBard, has requested that we get somebody from the Alchemix team. We've got Koala on deck for today. How's it going, my man? Good to see you.
Going good. Is his role technical interviewer or technical interrogator?
Hey, you know what? It's all in it's whatever your eyes and your mind imagines. He's LogrisTheBard from tokenomicsexplained.com has been along for the ride with our podcast pretty much since the beginning. And I think some guests maybe walk away as he was kind of an interrogator, but we call him our technical interviewer. But certainly one thing that does happen is usually he gets paid to be a consultant at some point later on down the road. So you got three ways for this to go. But we're like so excited to have you on board. This is the Ov3rkoalafied DAO, the NFT project out of Ethereum Reddit, and we like to thank the daily general discussion on our Ethereum and the Ov3rkoalafied for hosting yet another amazing day. So, we're going to dive right into it. If I have never heard of Alchemix before, but I know what Ethereum is, how would you describe Alchemix to somebody that's in crypto but maybe doesn't know about your product?
Yeah, that's a good way to ask the question, because whenever I describe Alchemix, I'm like, well, you can describe it differently depending on who your audience is. But for people who are in crypto, may hold Ether stablecoins, may dabble in DeFi, it is a like-kind lending protocol, synthetic assets. So you can borrow synthetic ETH off your ETH. You can borrow synthetic stablecoins off your stablecoins. Your full deposit will continue to earn yield, and then you can go spend those synthetic stablecoins wherever you want. And then the yield you earn is going to repay your debt over time. So it creates what we call a self-repaying loan. And it's a good use case because it's all like kind. There's no liquidations. For people who are familiar with leverage yield farming, you could view it that way too. Your debt is denominated the same way as your collateral. But the difference is because you take this loan and there are no liquidations, you're not locked into the protocol. You can take this loan, spend it wherever you want. So it's pretty much the most peace of mind way you can take a loan. So it enables use cases that are maybe more long tail, like people may, with leverage farming or borrowing off Aave with liquidations or something, you may be deploying those funds, but you're ready to top up your health factor at any moment. With Alchemix, we see a lot of people take loans and go spend them in the real world, like buying a boat, down payment on a house, things like that, things where they're never going to get this money back because they know with Alchemix, they're not going to have a liquidation call. They're not going to have to top up their health factor. They can get out anytime they want. So yeah, I think like kind lending with the less upside but less downside than leverage, for example, is a good way to describe it.
Okay, so let's just throw a number out there to get started. Let's say I want to take out a loan for a very small boat, $1,000 boat. What would be a method by which I could get $1,000 put together?
Well, you're definitely going to spend more than $1,000 on that boat after you buy it. We'll start with the $1,000.
You don't know you don't know the people I know in the state of Kansas. There's a lot of meth out here. They acquire things they just need 1,000. They don't need 10,000.
Yeah. So you kind of have two options, right? So you have 2,000 USDC on chain.
Okay.
You can go spend. Without using Alchemix, you can go spend 1,000 USDC on this boat.
Okay.
You have 1,000 USDC left that you can do something with on chain. You can put it in Aave, earn 5% yield, say.
Oh wow.
With Alchemix, with Alchemix, you're gonna take your $2,000, you're gonna deposit it to Alchemix, where we are gonna still use Aave to earn the yield. You're gonna mint synthetic dollars from Alchemix, so you can mint up to 50% of the value. So you can mint 1,000 synthetic USDC. You go swap that to USDC. Synthetic USDC is soft peg, so you might take like a 1% to 2% haircut. So you're going to get around $980, $990 back. So you can haggle with the guy selling you the boat to give you $10 off. And in the meantime, your full $2,000 is going to be earning yield in Aave. And so the difference here is that in scenario one, you bought this boat and you have $1,000 earning yield. In scenario two, you bought this boat and you have $2,000 earning yield. Yes, you took a $20 haircut, but that's made up for in the first year of earning yield. And there's no liquidations. You can hold this position as long as you want. So it's essentially you sold your collateral, but you didn't sell the right to earn yield on this collateral. So it's just a more efficient way to route your funds.
Hence the phrase self-repaying. Okay,
yeah, so
interesting.
The self-repaying is actually a separate aspect of this. Even if it wasn't, even if rather than repaying the loan, if it just increased the amount of collateral you had, if they just gave you the yield as if it was an Aave, everything you said would still be true. It's just you're earning interest on $2,000 instead of $1,000 at the cost of having had $2,000 to start, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So another way you can view it is you're essentially earning double yield on the $1,000 you have left compared to if you hadn't used Alchemix.
Okay, so simple, smooth brain math time. So let's say I have $3,000. I only want $1,000, but I put up $3,000. Does that pay the loan off faster?
Yes, it would, because you're earning more yield relative to the debt you took on.
So when did Alchemix start? Or let's ask this: what is your role at Alchemix, and when did you join the team, or are you the founder? I need to.
Yeah, so I'm COO at Alchemix, so that basically means I cat herd and tell people what to do and just try to do helpful things, and that's varied week by week for the last few years. Alchemix started, I believe it was 2021, spring 2021. I discovered the project as a community member shortly after that. Just I had been looking for some way to contribute in crypto, essentially because I didn't want to stare at charts all day. But I knew I would be thinking about crypto every day. And I vibed with Alchemix, and I essentially just started helping out in the community, answering people's questions, writing governance proposals, and then eventually came on officially as a business development person to help out one of the founders who had kind of accidentally become the lead business development person. That's Scoopy Trooples. Eventually that just grew into this COO role. So I think I've been working for Alchemix officially for 3+ years, but unofficially essentially since Alchemix started.
How many versions of what is the evolution of Alchemix since the inception? Are there more than one version?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So 2021 was version 1, and that was the same use case I described, but the only yield source was Yearn, because that was kind of the yield source at the time. It was actually Alchemix was the first way in DeFi, I'm pretty sure, to take loans off of yield-bearing collateral. Up until then, you could only take Yearn's loans off of like naked ETH, but Alchemix was the first way to take loans off of yield-bearing collateral, and then Abracadabra came along and expanded that to taking loans off like non-like-kind loans. Alchemix v2, which is the version we're on now, I believe launched sometime in 2023. I may be getting that wrong. And that essentially just expanded on the yield sources that you can tap into. So now users have an option of how they want to earn the yield that repays their debt. And then Alchemix v3 is what we're getting close to shipping now, should be before the end of the year. And that's what we'll get deeper into later on in this podcast.
We are joined by Koala from Alchemix. If you're watching us on X, give us a like and a retweet if you would. And we're also live on YouTube right now. If you have any questions, you can come straight to the EV Mavericks Discord. You can join the Doots podcast chat channel, and we can get some of your questions. So there was a question. Well, before I do, before we go to version 3, because I think that's the big topic for today. What assets can I use to start the loan process?
Yeah, so right now we're Ethereum and stablecoins.
Can you do a combination of both?
Yes, but you can only take you can't take a synthetic USDC loan off of your Ethereum position.
Okay.
So you can mix and match, but you can only take the correct synthetic asset off your collateral. And
is it legal in the United States?
Who knows?
Okay.
Illegal.
Okay.
Yeah, the benefit we have is that we truly are a global team.
Nice.
Like, I'm one of the few US-based contributors. And so we do have a registered association now for some of the off-chain requirements we have, and that was another big thing I helped out with. But we have team members in something like 10, 15 countries.
Wonderful.
So the element of is it legal in the US is kind of like stuff I do. The stuff I do is legal in the US.
There you go. So yes, not financial advice, but I think hopefully over time we all get regulatory regulatory clarity. I'm not even saying this is a US based show. I was just curious for my own greedy reasons.
And that is actually an element of the V3 design, is creating a system that has a legal framework and is legitimate in the eyes of some sort of legal system, because I do think it's important that in DeFi people recognize that not everything is immutable. Most things are not immutable. And so, sorry, that's my Roomba emptying itself.
I can't hear it.
Okay, good. Yeah, so this idea that like things aren't immutable, so you're trusting someone, and in many cases you are trusting a DAO, but you're also trusting administrators who are like single people or single entities who have a lot of control over your funds. And I think it's important that anytime you do have a system where you are trusting not just the blockchain and the DAO to enforce the system, that the people you are trusting have some sort of legal incorporation. Otherwise, you're just blindly giving someone your money with no path to hold them accountable for it.
Yeah, I can see a future where Alchemix, I hope, is a serviceable product within the banking industry, kind of replaces some of the banking stuff.
It's one of those beautiful things where in the early year of 2021, it was one of the first examples of something that didn't really exist in TradFi. We weren't just like replicating TradFi on chain. We were doing something kind of unprecedented, or that there wasn't an easy parallel for. That's one of the things that, because I've been with Alchemix since Alchemix V1 clearly, right? Like, so that was one of the things that first attracted me to this protocol. I want to talk a little bit about what my perceived shortcomings were from Alchemix V2, and then hopefully we can talk about how Alchemix V3 addresses those and what the new mechanisms are, and get into who the ideal users or use cases for this are, and then go from there, I guess. I have some selfish questions I'll ask in terms of like, would I be a user of this in the next year, which we'll get into later once we go through the mechanics. But one of the issues with Alchemix V2 is that there are some pools that have really much higher yield than others. You have some pools that are earning like 1.5%, and then you have some pools that are earning closer to like 4%. And that every AL ETH that's outstanding basically has the same cost of the protocol, but some of them are outstanding backed by a higher yield collateral, and ultimately it's the yield that's backing you have different synthetic assets backed by different things. So USDC is backed by reserves. Frax is backed by reserves and maybe yield. Curve USD is backed by interest rate manipulation and reserves. DAI used to be backed by interest rate manipulation. It was basically like, if it fell under peg, we jack up the interest rates in the loan until people were incentivized to close the loan, right? So Alchemix is a protocol where the synthetic assets are essentially backed by the yield of the underlying collateral, rather than by redemption of the underlying collateral, at least Alchemix V2. How do we, with Alchemix V3, I know that you are changing the nature of the underlying collateral, and I want to talk about a little bit more of that, of how can we get the yield on the other underlying collateral up so that a loan doesn't repay itself in 40 years, but repays itself in 10 to 15, right? These are markedly different from a finance perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think first worth touching on the one part of V2 that I didn't explain is that I mentioned when you sell your synthetic asset, it's going to sell for a little less than $1 for the synthetic USDC. That's because someone is going to buy that synthetic asset. They are able to redeem it on an uncertain timeline for 1 USDC. So they have this uncertain timeline to earn a small profit, right? And so that's where the backed by yield that Logri is talking about comes from, where the rate that you redeem your synthetic assets in Alchemix V2 is going to be dictated by how much yield is flowing into the system. And you identified a true issue with V2 is even when we do integrate higher yield strategies, a lot of TVL is just forgotten and just sits in these low yield strategies. And that's a bad thing for us, because one, higher yield is where you can get more fees to sustain the protocol. Higher yield is where users are getting more benefit. And in a yield-based stablecoin, if you have low yield backing the synthetic asset, it's going to result in a lower price for the synthetic asset. And so that's the primary reason. And the other issue we have is we integrate 20 yield strategies. Now you come to the Alchemix site and you're like, oh God, I have 20 options. Like, what do I do? And if the yield drops,
it's a little overwhelming. Yeah,
that's overwhelming. If the yield drops between one, now you have to migrate from one to the other, and there's going to be slippage you face as an individual. migration requires you to unwrap and wrap, and it's there's a lot of room for error there. And so that's the primary reason we've moved in Alchemix v3 to each asset on each chain is going to have a single collateral type, and that collateral type is going to be a Morpho v2 vault curated by the Alchemix DAO. So the thing that's not changing is the DAO is still deciding which strategies are going to be incorporated. What is changing is now the DAO is going to decide what weighting of strategies the user is experiencing. And so if you come in and deposit, you know what strategies are going to be involved. But that means like if we integrate a new high yield strategy, we can bump up the allocation there. If a strategy is just really not earning or is kind of outdated, we can deallocate from that strategy. And that way we can ensure that at the very least, we're keeping competitive yields. And I think there are decentralization aspects of this that we can maybe go into later. But another element is just categorizing these strategies so that a user understands that, like, for example, one thing that's going to happen is low risk strategies will be partially defined by fundamental oracles in terms of like what is the actual backing of this asset. And so that way, as long as you are staying below the LTV makeup of those low risk assets, like say the low risk assets make up 50% of the collateral. As long as your loan to value is less than 50%, you can never get liquidated off of an Oracle malfunction or something like that. And so that's kind of how we plan to keep these like low risk use cases while also allowing higher LTV for people who feel comfortable managing that risk better and understanding what the yield token makeup is.
I think we need to back up a little bit for people to first understand that there is an LTV limit, and that the LTV limit was just like constant set at 0.5 before. Mm-hmm. So in Alchemix, you said before you could deposit 2,000 to borrow 1,000, but if you had deposited 2,000, let's say died Aave, you might be able to borrow 1,800 USDC against that. It wouldn't exactly be in like kind. You could borrow 1,800 of anything, but the difference is basically that you would be losing money if you did that on Aave, right? Because the borrow rate's always higher than the supply rate. So if you supply 2,000, then borrow 1,800, you're losing money. Whereas in Alchemix, you have your money and you're making money on the full 2,000 deposit, right? Which is brings me to my second point I want to talk to you about, which is that Alchemix as a protocol has always been, there's kind of two sides to a market. There's basically the people that are supporting the AL assets, the synthetic assets, and then there's the borrowers that are minting those assets. And they're kind of in a tug of war with the market forces, which basically affects the peg. Alchemix has always been very heavily slanted towards the borrower side of this. So you see this as like the vaults, at least the ones that have desirable yield rate, are often just absolutely full. There's just, you couldn't use the protocol if you wanted to because they're full. You can see some of those there, like Lido WSTETH. It just adds cap. And that is because it's one of the higher yield ones that is available. I'm sure if you go down the list, there's generally correlation where the higher yield ones are going to be full. Frax FRX ETH there, right? Over 2.5, full. Dinero APX ETH, 4.1% full, right? This is basically because it's such a good deal for borrowers compared to alternatives. So what sliders or mechanisms are being built into Alchemix v3 to kind of find a more natural market medium rather than something that is always in favor of the borrower side, as Alchemix v2 was?
Yeah, so in V2, if you're taking a loan, you pretty much have 2x leverage indefinitely. As your loan repays, your leverage drops off a bit. So you're over like your 10, 20 year, whatever repayment time, you're going to get slowly deleveraged. And so with V3, the primary thing we're doing is we are allowing for a variable rate of deleveraging. And where that comes in is right now in Alchemix v2, if you go buy a synthetic asset, you go to redeem it in the mechanism we call the transmuter. You don't know when you're going to get the underlying asset back. It's this variable yield source. In Alchemix v3, we're changing that to a fixed term. So we're going to say if you buy one LUSD for 0.98 USDC, for example, and you can get a fixed term from the transmuter, maybe that's 3 months. So you go deposit one LUSD that you bought for 0.98. 3 months later, you get one USDC. You essentially earned approximately 8% yield on your USDC by doing that. By adding that certainty to the transmuter, we create some uncertainty in the borrowing position. But like you touched on, when you borrow, you're not paying an interest rate. Instead, you're getting deleveraged. And so what that means is like maybe at the start, you take a 50% LTV loan, so you're earning effectively 2x yield. That 2x leverage yield is going to be going down, eventually converging to 1x leverage. And so you basically go from earning a lot of yield to earning less yield, at which point you can always decide to re-leverage. The only downsides you have to account for are paying some fee to Alchemix. And if the synthetic asset is severely under peg, you're going to have some upfront cost of doing that. So in that way, your upfront cost is fully defined. And then your benefit is in a pretty definable range that you can project. And so it should be pretty easy to create these positions. Say like, this is a good idea. I'm going to create this position, take this loan. And then when you get deleveraged, you can just let your collateral continue earning yield, at which point you'll eventually still end up in this full collateral, zero debt position, fully self-repaying loan, or you can just run it back and re-leverage again. But what this does is create checkpoints for the borrower. Rather than taking a loan and not checking it for 10 years, it's saying, hey, maybe check on this loan every few months. You may decide to let it ride. You may decide you want to re-leverage it. But that way you're not entrenching all these users into the system that just get this forever benefit at the cost of people redeeming the synthetic assets. So that's kind of the balance that we're correcting there. I had another point on that, but
I want to break that into some simpler terms for people who may be in DeFi. So the new transmuter functions kind of like a Pendle PT position or something, where there is an end date and a value that is known, and you're buying it at something under that. In TradFi terms, this would be called a zero coupon bond. If you go back towards the time when Alchemix was founded, there was a protocol that was hot at the time called Olympus DAO, which had a bunch of these kind of short duration bonds. Which was their way. Anyway, this is
governance tokens.
Yeah, I did not touch Olympus with a 10-foot pole, and it seems to have been wise in the end. But nonetheless, the concept of a zero coupon bond is basically how treasury bills work, right? You buy the bond like $96 and you redeem it, or $960 and you redeem it at $1,000 sometime later, right? And this is basically how yield is nominated, by how much under the end value you are buying it at. The transmuter is doing something very similar. So you deposit the AL asset that you want to redeem, and it might be valued. So let's say AL ETH might be valued at 0.98 ETH. And then it's going to redeem in 3 months. So you deposit it at 0.98, and you're going to redeem it for 1 ETH, not 1 AL ETH, but 1 ETH in 3 months. And that gives you essentially 3 months, there's 4 of those in the year. So 4 times 2% would be 8% yield. How are you determining what the capacity is in each transmuter round? How are you determining what the duration of the bonds are, the supply of those essentially that you're emitting to the market?
Yeah, so it's the duration is a parameter the DAO can set. There's plenty of opportunity to put an algorithm to that, but it's meant to be pretty simple to start. So you can, like, in some ways, the market's gonna self-select what the asset price is based on that duration you sent. And that's actually maybe one thing I wanted to mention before is, like, when you have a low asset price, it hurts, kind of hurts everyone, because LPers freak out even though it's this good time for redemption, and borrowers don't like it because now they can't take loans because they have a big upfront cost. So this redemption mechanism helps everybody.
Yeah, the previous transmuter was kind of you didn't know what the APR you were getting was in a transparent way, right? And so I agree this adds a lot more certainty for investors to be able to perform their role as arbitragers in the system.
And I think it makes it quite simple, where a lot of people who may have been borrowers before may also find themselves seeking transmuter opportunities too. But sorry, getting back to your original question, it was about already lost it.
We can take this in a lot of directions from what I was saying, but let me ask this. So when you said it 3 months, and you could have said it at 6 months, or one month, or 1 week. What do you see that, like, if I said it at 1 week, clearly that's going to be a much higher APR for the transmuter.
I mean, I think ultimately the goal. So one of the guiding lights here is a predictable leverage system, because there are so many ways in DeFi you can go get leverage on yield farming, and you may deposit when you're earning 100% yield on like 10x leverage, and then the next day you may find, because interest rates have spiked, you're earning negative 100% yield, and you now have to decide, do you want to exit with slippage and take a loss? Do you want to just pay negative 100% yield until it resolves itself? Like it's just a really volatile situation. So we're trying to create a slow-moving leverage system that's in, rather than like negative 100 to 100%, it's more in the like, you're not going to lose money and you'll earn more than.
And how much? How do you determine the capacity in each transmuter round?
Yeah.
So the unspoken thing here,
Mhm.
the unspoken thing here is that the ETH that's going into the transmuter to redeem the AO asset is coming from vaults in some way. That's not in Alchemix V2. This is basically limited by the profit of the DAO, right? Like the profit being taken was being used to fund the transmuter. But it sounds like in Alchemix V3 that's not the case. It's coming from the vault collateral. And what you're calling redemptions.
Variable deleveraging I mentioned, where if there's an extreme amount of demand to use the transmuter and it's totally uncapped, you might get deleveraged in the order of a few months. Now, you still had a few months where you were earning incredibly outsized yield, and it's important to note that this deleveraging happens based on the debt you have. So if you take a very low LTV debt, like a pretty small loan relative to your collateral, you're not going to feel this deleveraging much, because your yield is going to outpace it. If you're playing with much higher LTVs, you're going to have to think more about how this deleveraging may affect your position. But the transmuter does have the ability to cap. The default is it's capped to the amount of assets minted on that chain. So for example, you can't have people minting assets on Arbitrum and all loading up the Arbitrum transmuter. You're limited to the assets there. So that to some extent caps it. The intent is to have transmuter timelines between 1 and 3 months. That's just 3 months is kind of the max duration that a lot of liquid funds and stuff will work with. So just going beyond that really limits just the total addressable market of people who may use it. Going below 1 month, I think you're going to find that you just have to cap the transmuter a lot, which is just going to create this situation where now people are racing to enter the transmuter whenever cap's available, and it's just going to create probably like spikes of big yield followed by no opportunities, and just not a smooth system. And just in the simulations we've run, I don't think there's any need to go below 1 month. I mean, one thing to look at is like, you can run all the simulations you want, but one piece of knowledge we have to take into this is the fact that like objectively Alchemix V2 should not work as well as it does. Like, it just shouldn't. The AL assets, in theory, if you like try to run an economic model, the AL assets should not be at the price they're at. But because of various things like curve positions, treasuries, just market emotions and stuff like that.
Complicated ecosystem with a lot of moving parts.
It's a complicated ecosystem. So one thing you have to compare is when you take an AL asset that has managed to stay at around 0.98 peg with a really terrible, pretty slow redemption system, and you suddenly allow guaranteed redemptions on a 1 to 3 month timeline. Like in theory, I would say maybe the AL asset is 0.98, but it's already at 0.98 typically, even with this worse redemption system. So it'll be interesting to see how it performs. And another philosophy we've taken is just absolute parameterization in this design, where V2 again was just limited, but because of various things like curve positions, treasuries, just market emotions and stuff like that.
Complicated ecosystem with a lot of moving parts.
It's a complicated ecosystem. So one thing you have to compare is when you take an AL asset that has managed to stay at around 0.98 peg with a really terrible.
I'm not hearing feedback from you, but if you are, I understand why you want to fix that.
I was hearing my previous audio just speak back to me just now. I think we're resolved now.
Yeah, we're all caught up.
Okay, good. Yeah, so I guess I'll just close that out by saying 1 to 3 month transmuter timeline. I think we're going to see a stronger AL asset price than we currently have. And because of that, we would have the opportunity to cap the transmuter more if we want to, just to keep the borrower friendly environment. But I think ultimately the goal for parameterization is to create a scenario where if you're taking a low LTV loan, there's just no scenario where you're going to lose money. If you take a high LTV loan, you might have to do some more projections, think about it more, and appropriately set the UI up to tell people that. Like,
and is low or high determined by market forces, or is it like less than 50%? The system actually acts different at an LTV?
No, it's determined by market forces, but you can
So this sounds a little bit like Liquidity. Do you know how their system works? Basically, you have this collateral.
Yeah, but they'll redeem the lowest interest rates first, correct?
Yeah,
Like
so that's V2, right? So actually we can talk about this. So Liquidity V1, they redeemed against the highest borrow, like LTV loans first, and everyone had a single interest, right? It was, and then in Liquidity V2, they let everyone set their own interest rate, but they redeem against the lowest interest rates claims first, right?
Mhm.
So just how it self-selects is a little bit differently. In Alchemix, there's no difference in interest rate on anyone. So the only thing you have to go off by signal is the LTV.
Well, it's not necessarily the LTV, it's just the debt you have. But if you have a lower LTV, you have more yield you're earning to offset that debt. I also do want to clarify, I think redemptions are a pretty painful system in non-like-kind lending, because if you are taking a USDC loan off your ETH, typically redemption systems are going to mean that you're going to have to sell your ETH at a pretty low price when you're close to liquidation. That's just when redemptions tend to spike in these systems. With like-kind lending in Alchemix v3, those events don't really exist, right? Because there's no, like, the price of ETH does not matter in this system.
You might still find a situation where, okay, you deposit 100 ETH, you plan to live on, the loan against it for a couple of years. You come back a couple of years later and you have 50 ETH. And you're like, what the heck happened? Well, you got redeemed against. That sounds to that person an awful lot like a liquidation, because they had already sold the LETH, the LUSD for cash. At that point, they can't rebuy the ETH if the ETH price has gone up in those years.
They can, though. They can re-leverage within Alchemix v3 as long as synthetic asset price is acceptable to them. And because we have this stronger redemption system, the synthetic asset price should be generally acceptable to them. And so it's this idea.
But the collateral's gone, right? Because that's what you put in the transmuter.
Well, yeah, but let's say you start with 100 ETH and you take an 80 ETH loan, right? 80 synthetic ETH. And that's what you live off for a while. Your net value is 20 ETH, right? Out of there?
Yeah.
So eventually, let's say you get fully redeemed. Like in 2 years, you're like fully redeemed, deleveraged. So you are down to 20 ETH collateral, 0 ETH debt, plus whatever yield you earned. So let's just say you have 25 ETH collateral now.
Sure.
So you are at 25 ETH collateral, 0 ETH debt. You can then re-leverage within Alchemix back up to 100 ETH collateral, 75 ETH debt. So now you still have a net value.
You basically loop it.
Yeah, you basically loop it, and we can provide a looping tool that's on the dev to-do list and all that. And so
I wrote one for Alchemix v2. You should rip that thing apart.
That is very much on the radar. So it's this idea that, like, you don't get this promise of guaranteed leverage, because right now people in v2 take this loan, and 3 years later, if the asset price sucks, like they don't have to work.
It's not their problem.
Yeah, but that means new users, it's entirely their problem. So that makes it really hard to get new users. It's like, wow, all these people who got in early are just benefiting off the backs of the people who want to use it now. And so this deleveraging system essentially creates a checkpoint where it's like, hey, we need to, like, make sure people are getting deleveraged so that if the protocol is a bit unhealthier, then everyone kind of bears the burden. But it also, I think it's this self-fulfilling prophecy where, like, in my mind, creating long-tail risk means that risk is going to happen. Eliminating long-tail risk means that you're not going to have these, like, scenarios nearly as often, if ever. And so you should, by eliminating this long-tail risk, you should have a much healthier system where you kind of create this self-fulfilling prophecy where when people do need to re-leverage, they're much more able to. Whereas in V2, if people want to re-leverage, may not be a good idea because the synthetic asset price may not be as good as they need it to be. That's the idea there. And I think it's worth maybe taking a step back now, because we've kind of introduced Alchemix v3, but I just want to explain, like, the 3 types of users. So in Alchemix v2, you had your borrower, you had your transmuter user. Most people are borrowers. Not a lot of people use the transmuter because of that uncertain timeline. In Alchemix v3, I think we're kind of going to have 3 types of users. We're going to have those people who just want peace of mind. They want to deposit some collateral. They want to take a loan below 50% LTV. They want to buy a boat with it. And ultimately, the pitch to them is doing this Alchemix loan and earning yield that way is going to give you a better outcome than if you just buy the boat and try to earn yield with the rest of your collateral. It's going to be a better outcome. It's going to be very predictable. it's going to be, you're not going to have to babysit this thing. Like you're going to have a better outcome. And I think because we're increasing the LTV, you're going to have people who just want to max leverage farm degen, and that's something we can't cater to in V2. We can't cater to the degens. V3 is going to let people be like, I want to take a 90% LTV loan. I want to max out this leverage farming. And I think ultimately it's going to create a situation where people are generally going to earn more yield. There might be situations where they're losing money, but rather than that leverage farming scenario I described before, where you can be anywhere between negative 100 and 100% on any given day, they might find they're earning between negative 10% and 50%, or negative, or even just zero if they set up their simulation correctly.
Let's zoom in how that would, the mechanics of that for people, because I think this is fascinating. Not many people understand leverage looping. But let's say you have our $1,000 example. We'll just use ALUSD here, and let's say that the peg is 0.99, 0.98, something in that range, right? Mm-hmm. So if you have $1,000 and you want to get up to an LTV of 90%, that's a cap, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so you go max degen. So you basically can go to a flash loan, something like, I don't know, I think you can flash loan off of Euler, for example. So you borrow you have your 1,000 USDC. You borrow 9,000 on Euler. You deposit 10,000 USDC to the meta yield token on Alchemix. You borrow 9,000 or so ALUSD. You trade that back to USDC, and then you repay the Euler loan. And you're left with this 10,000. You repaid the loan from Euler. So there's no more interest there, and you're left now with 10,000 USDC earning interest, even though you started with 1,000.
Yeah, you have 10,000 earning interest, and you have 9,000
of debt. But you're earning the interest on the full 10,000, and that is obviously very powerful. If you're earning, let's say, 10% on that, which is not outrageous for DeFi, right? Now you're earning 100 a year on your 1,000. You have 10,000 there, so you're earning 1,000 a year on your original $1,000 deposit, which is basically 100% APR to you, which is outrageously good, right? Mm-hmm. The downside is, of course, it's going to deleverage you over time, depending on as it depegs, right? You're going to start to bleed out some of that $10,000 position to the transmuter during redemptions. So every 3 months, you might lose another 2 or 3% of that just ticks down.
Yep. And so, you're being deleveraged. You are paying a fee based on the rate you're being deleveraged, but that's essentially set where it'll never be more than 1 to 2% APR. So it's never going to be anywhere close to the yield you're earning per set of collateral. So you're always going to be earning positive yield. What you just have to consider is like, hey, I'm starting at 10x leverage. Maybe in a few months I'm down to like 2x leverage. Great, I earned money. I sold my initial loan for like 0.98, so I took like a 2% loss at the start. So just making those comparisons is what you'd have to do. But it is, expected to be a very powerful tool. And I think one interesting kind of thing that happens is the concern here is like people are going to be taking a ton of loans, right? Like they're going to be churning out these loans. They might be suppressing the price of the asset, because there's going to be a point where they're just like, I don't care if the asset's 0.96, like it's worth it for me to get 10x leverage on this yield.
Sure. And again, that's that type of yield, right? If you're making 10 or 12% in the meta yield token, sure.
And that's where we're going to see people maybe taking the more degen approach, and if the yield drops, maybe now they're actually in a position where they're not earning.
So the gamble here, the uncertainty, isn't so much that the interest rate drops, because you're not paying on the money you borrow in Alchemix, right? The gamble is that you sell the ALUSD at DPEG at 0.96, and then you start getting deleveraged aggressively before you can earn the yield back to make up that loss, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's the kind of casino this is, which is different than any other type of leverage looping thing like Gearbox, where basically you lose if the interest rates go up or down, right? If the yield in some DeFi position goes down too much, now you're suddenly losing a lunch here. Here, you don't care about that as much. You care about the rate of redemption, which is just people showing up to the redemption module, the transmuter, and eating capital because they want a 20% APR. They want a 15% APR, right? So the more you depeg it, the more others depeg it, the more aggressive that gamble becomes for you.
Correct. And my kind of guiding line in DeFi is I never want to create a casino for the sake of a casino. If you're going to create a casino, it has to be enabling more positive some use cases. And so what happens here is, one, these degens doing this casino will create fixed yield transmuter opportunities. I think there are going to be plenty of people. We've seen how Pendle has blown up, and this will be an entirely new source of fixed yield. Essentially, you can say it's like fixed yield based on Alchemix vault demand or something like that. But so that creates a very easy to tap into fixed yield opportunity. So that's great for people who want certainty with finances. And I think we've seen that use case caters to a lot of people and has resonated with a lot of people. The other unique aspect is, say I take some debt. I'm just like buying a boat. I take a 50% LTV loan. My debt is now ready to be redeemed by people using the transmuter, right? So people who try to redeem through the transmuter, when their redemptions come due, they're going to be taking some collateral from me and reducing my debt. That's what a redemption does. It reduces your collateral and your debt in step. But if people are re-leveraging the system, then there are going to be all these new transmuter positions created. And when a new transmuter position is created, it kind of pushes some of my obligation, where like when someone takes out a new loan, their loan is immediately eligible to be sent to whoever is asking for it, right, from the transmuter, which means that, but their debt is going to kind of build up what they owe. And so this is kind of a hard to explain aspect. I'm probably not explaining it well, but essentially the more deleveraging, or the more people are churning the system around me, if I'm not re-leveraging, my kind of deleveraging timeline is going to extend. And so people playing this casino and churning the system is going to create a lot of good fixed yield opportunities. It's going to make the people with lower LTV loans who are just kind of sitting, it's going to give them a better experience. And like you said, I think it is an entirely new, unique type of casino that maybe there's still risk involved, but it's not like this 100-0 risk, or like it's in a more easy to define range of outcomes, which I think people are gonna like, because it's still risk, but it's risk you can maybe feel a bit more comfortable with how it fits into your strategy, and not just feel like a total.
I want to talk about a few sort of peripheral, maybe suggestions would be the word. One, if I'm using the transmuter and then there's an expiry on this is true in Pendle as well. The act of having to go and redeem my PT and roll it over to a new position and kind of like roll that steady yield from month to month forward creates all kinds of short-term tax events and just gas and pain in the ass. Maybe you should create a wrapped system that just does the redemption and then rolls into the next vault, right?
Yeah, so funny enough, we actually built one for V2, but never launched it because we were deep in V3 design. We're like, there's no point. So there will be one for V3. It's ERC 4626 transmuter looper, where you basically just say, I want to be part of this. I want to be getting kind of the average of whatever this yield is. It kind of turns it into a like, the difference with Pendle is you have fixed terms, but with Alchemix, you have fixed dates where everyone rolls over. With Alchemix, you kind of have continuous rollovers. If I deposit today, in 3 months, I get my collateral. If you deposited tomorrow, you get your collateral a day later. So it's all these.
You could do something like tokamak, where you queue up the deposits, and then once a week you lump the whole last weekend, and then do the rollover weekly.
Yep. But yeah, the intent is to kind of create an ERC 4626ified version of this transmuter, where people are just like, the transmuter yields solid. I like how it's done. I want to tap into this yield without having to roll this over. You could also do some sort of managed vaults, but bare minimum, we do have ERC 4626 transmuter looping on the roadmap.
Okay. Next up, my tax accountant is going to absolutely hate me if I use Alchemix, because in V3, so you take some like coin, you take some like token tracker.
You get an NFT position you do get a NFT representing your position in V3, which is fundamentally different from V2, where you don't get any sort of receipt token.
Okay. Well, that definitely can change the tax treatment a little bit. So at least I deposit, I get an NFT. Now I just hold the NFT. And so all this stuff that's happening underneath the covers, redemptions, interest I'm earning, whatever, is whether that is a taxable events that are occurring is kind of up to you and your tax accountant.
Yeah, whether you consider it whenever you eventually close that NFT position.
So if you do a redemption against me, is that a taxable event on my account? I don't know. if I earn interest and you do, and I earn, on the deposit, and that increases, or sorry, that's used for debt repayment first. Is that considered a taxable event? Well, I don't know, right?
An
And
issue in
then,
V2 as well of just tracking these loan repayments, and that's a giant
yeah,
mess.
that's clearly a loan repayment. So
Yeah,
another
but
option.
how much is yours when it happens? That's crazy hard to track.
Yeah, it is, because you're just part of a pool. And so you have to know the size of the pool at every harvest, basically,
Yeah.
in order to calculate that in an honest way. And it's not on your address. So if you just pull in, like I was going to say, if I just use a tool like Coinly or CoinTracker or others and import my address, I don't get any of that, right? It doesn't appear in any of the records because it's not on my address. It's not activity coming from me. So they can still be a taxable event because it's still a loan repayment. A potentially tax favorable way to handle that is, rather than repaying the loan, is to extend the credit line. Visa can extend you a credit card, and that's not a taxable event. If Visa forgives your loan, that is a taxable event, right? So this is it matters to the tune of 25% cap gains or 40% income tax in certain countries, right? Where I would either owe 40% as income for the tax for the loan forgiveness income, or I'd owe zero if you just extended the credit line. And to you, it's just one column versus another. It doesn't matter, right? So it's just how it appears on the website. Basically, it's adding to one number instead of the other, but it has very real world implications on the effective yield to me.
I mean, yeah, worth maybe us chatting farther about that offline if it comes down to UI presentation.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it might actually affect one of the underlying numbers, but like you're literally adding to one variable instead of another. But to the effective increase in the effective yield by 40%, to me, that is a big deal, right? So the whole position's wrapped in NFT. That's interesting. And the last thing is you're basically outsourcing the harvesting, the previous compounding, and all of that. You're outsourcing that to a Morpho V2 vault.
Yeah, and the big issue in Alchemix V2 was to repay your debt. We had to the protocol had to unwrap yield tokens. And protocols are not good at unwrapping yield tokens. People are a lot better at doing that. Because there's just a lot of variability in what makes the most sense to unwrap. The idea is that we are no longer actually harvesting your yield tokens. Instead, we're just letting those accrue value and just tracking that, essentially. And so when we redeem you, we do a check on the value of those yield tokens, but we're not actually withdrawing, or we're not actually unwrapping them. And I should clarify, this is kind of an interesting point. But when you use the transmuter, assuming there's no exploits or anything going wrong or anything, the UI is just going to direct you through. You get yield tokens from the transmuter when you redeem, but the UI will just direct you to unwrapping those to ETH. But if there is an exploit or something, that means you may get less yield tokens than you anticipated. Or for example, if there's a yield strategy where the unwrap is delayed, you might get 1 ETH of yield token, but you may not be able to unwrap that to ETH for a week or something, or a portion of it. So the fixed yield people are on the hook for any depeg in the yield token. But that's where the intent is, just you don't integrate long tail risk unwrap strategies, essentially, and those should not be part of systems like this anyway.
I mean, this is, I think you could, in the same way you have your meta yield token on your Morpho V2 vault, I think you could pretty easily extend this to add something like a Tokamak Auto ETH or a Yearn V3 or a Summer Vi,
So it's Morpho V2, which means we can add any strategy we want. So Tokamak is already day one strategy. It's in the upcoming audit in a week. We have
okay. I mean, it can be part of a basket, I guess, but
yes. Yeah. So then the thing is, you have alchemists and transmuters are in pairs. So you could, in theory, launch an additional alchemist transmuter pair on a chain, or a curated model or something like that. I mean, we're starting 1-1. But you could start to launch additional alchemist transmuter pairs to start to create kind of what you have with V2. So we're not totally locked out of that model. It just then means that people would have to look at multiple transmuters on each chain. And so the start plan is we have a different meta yield token on each chain. So there's a level of user choice that happens there in terms of which chain they want to use and what the makeup is on the chain. And we try to follow the identity of that chain.
Because the yield is never cross-chain. If you have a meta yield token on Arbitrum, that's not somehow going over to base to farm yield or something.
No, I mean, there are ways to do that, but no way
there are ways to, but you're not going to.
No way that we've deemed acceptable as of yet.
Okay.
There's nothing we've seen that, because we have pretty strong beliefs on cross-chain security and all that. I think our current bridging system reflects it pretty well. But yeah, you're not earning yield on multiple chains if you do that.
I think we've gone through the Alchemix v3 protocol in pretty good depth. I want to ask, is there any changes to the ALCX token, tokenomics, revenue streams in light of Alchemix v3?
Yeah, so one of my big kind of focus areas for the last 3 years has been just like, how do we make this a DeFi, a decentralized finance protocol, not a protocol owned by a DAO multisig.
I like you guys, though. I trust you with my multisig.
I'm not on the multisig, so you don't have to trust me. But yeah, the issue is like basically where that whole conversation went. Every time I've explored on-chain governance systems, it's generally resulted in being like, okay, we can't put something as complicated as Alchemix fully to on-chain governance. That's kind of where V2 also fell apart. It's just too much of a duct tape system to just fully put it to on-chain governance. There are too many security controls that essentially need to be centralized to be operated correctly. And just
sophistication, right? You can't put complicated decisions forward to a wide voter base of token holders. You have to centralize in some way in order to get people who are expert enough to make those decisions.
Exactly. So generally, you're trying to do immutability where you can. If you can't do that, you put economic controls to DAO decisions, and then you try to put security controls to a mix of DAO decisions and people who are qualified to have oversight and the ability to be like, no, don't do this. And those are the people who should be incorporated in some sort of legal entity so that there's a way to hold them accountable. And so we've fully designed Alchemix v3 with kind of that philosophy in mind, to the point where we've been working with lawyers to actually analyze FINMA among other guidelines, basically saying, okay, here's the immutable parts of Alchemix v3. Here are the controls the DAOs are going to have. Here are the controls that we want a centralized entity to have. If that central entity is incorporated in Europe, in the United States, in all these countries, can it do all these roles without actually being classified as a money manager? Because if you just basically where regulations come into play is like, if I'm doing stuff with my own money, whatever. If a company is doing stuff with their money, whatever. As soon as I give my money to someone else to manage, that's where all the regulations kick in, as it should. Like there's an element of just like, if I'm claiming I can manage someone's money, there needs to be a system to hold me accountable for that. And so this idea where we've essentially designed the centralized aspects of Alchemix v3 to not put those people into money manager roles. And so that means essentially the DAO is the money manager. The DAO is deciding, like, doing on-chain governance for what strategies are we going to use, what transmuter timeline do we want to have, and all that. But you can give centralized entities veto control for the ability to veto these powers. And these veto powers, among many other powers, do not put them in a position where they actually have control of user funds. They cannot take your funds.
That's a clever legal loophole. They can do it. I can only stop them, but I can't do it. So I'm not the money manager. They can totally do it, though.
No, they can't. And then the final aspect of that is you need to make it possible for the DAO to remove people from these roles if the DAO feels like they're blocking things they shouldn't. And now with most on-chain governance systems, this is they're just okay, if 50% of the people say yes, then we're good to go. And that's just not there's too much complexity here for that.
Oh yeah.
So that's where
I think there should be different thresholds. And frankly,
so
just getting even quorum on too many small votes is just it's very difficult.
Yeah. And so that's where Aragon OSX comes in. It's new protocol they built out this year. It's kind of the first time I was this stuff is actually possible now, where you can essentially define multiple levels of proposals, and every single function in the contracts that are being governed gets assigned to one of these levels. So for something like
what is the governing body of each decision can be different.
Yeah, and you can have different vetoers, different voters, different quorums, different thresholds, different paths for all of these, and you obviously
the hierarchies for veto power. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can essentially say, okay, if the transmuter timeline is being updated, that requires you to have 5,000 ALCX to make a proposal. It's like a 3-day timeline. It can't be vetoed or something. I mean, this is just a off the cuff example. The actual parameters are different. You can say if you're going to upgrade the contracts, you need like 20,000 ALCX to make a proposal. You need over 50% vote. You need to have a phase in voting where people can say no, or like change their yes votes to no, or like you can configure it a lot of ways. And so that ability lets you can even create an optimistic proposal where you're like, anyone with more than 5,000 ALCX can propose this. There's no need to vote, but if enough people vote no, then it just won't go through. But if no one votes at all, it'll just go through. And you can do that for like very low risk parameters where like if a parameter is updated stupidly, you can just undo it very quickly. And so there's all these different levels of proposals you can have. And then with that, you can kind of create a UI UX that's more integrated around like notifying people about the really important ones. So you're not creating a bunch of notification fatigue and all that. I think you can create a much more robust governance system. The last part of that, where ALCX comes in, is obviously ALCX is still intended to be the primary governance mechanism there. We're working on a queue system, essentially similar to Staked ETH, where if you want to enter the ALCX governance, you have to queue in and queue out. And this creates predictability, which has two benefits. One, if you see Alchemix governors are earning a shit ton of yield, those people governing know that there's only a certain amount they can be diluted. It's not like they're like, oh shit, I just did all this governance for a year and now like our yield is spiked and now people just bought ALCX and they're like hopping in and taking all this yield. Like you can limit the amount of people that are entering and exiting governance. That also creates a lot of security assurances where it's just much harder to do.
This is an alternative to the Flux system that you had previously described.
Yeah, that system got trashed. We can talk about that too. But this is because that system was made before V3 was a thing, before OSX was a thing. Also, frankly, there was some dev turnover in that time, and thankfully we've not like all of our devs or anything, but the main dev working on that system left for another opportunity, and so we've rebuilt the dev team around that, and we've been working on this queue system. And essentially, that system had too many bells and whistles. Ultimately, the goal is how do you securely govern and reward people for doing that. And so this queue system also means someone can't just buy a shit ton of ALCX and then propose something malicious and then exit. There's a lot of kind of fluid things about it that we're excited about that create good stability for a governance system. And the final kind of thing that we're building out for that is this ability to have subsets of governance that still are able to govern the main system. But for example, you could have subsets of governance who specifically, like someone is like, hey, I want to be part of the subset that sets weightings for yield strategies on Arbitrum, and you can specifically divert revenue from Arbitrum to them, for example. So you can have this ability to say, like, we don't need every single person in this DAO to govern this part of the system. We can allocate some specific revenue to that part and have a smaller governance set. And then that way we have a smaller set of people who have the proper amount of incentives to make these decisions. So it sounds quite pie in the sky, but frankly, the OSX work is largely done. The staking system the contracts are in development, scaffolded out, doing pretty well. We've talked with Tally on a lot of these approaches.
Are you changing how the DAO collects revenue from harvests? Is there another mechanism you're adding to get more money to the DAO? And are you limiting the payout from the DAO to governing active voters only in any way, like governance participants, or is it still going to benefit all ALCX holders?
No. So the first question was the revenue. Yeah. So first off, we'll get some revenue from the Morpho Vault. We can charge a small % of fee on yield because frankly, that's a product in and of itself of just a curated yield source. And then 2, we do charge a fee on redemption. So when you're getting deleveraged, we're taking a 0.5% of that, which based on the max deleverage, if there's max deleveraging happening in the system, that would be about a 2% rate on TVL.
Assuming you have a 3-month redemption, right? 3-month transmitter loop. So basically you're saying, well, the degens are going to pay for us.
I mean, I think there's going to be revenue. If TVL goes way up, then there's revenue from the yield token. If we you end up with just like not a lot of TVL, but a ton of churning, then there's revenue from that. We added some parameters for other places we can take revenue. Like we could take revenue from the transmuter, but we don't want to. Like we think that's unnecessary, but it's like we might as well have that option.
Are you still taking from harvests or not?
Well, there are.
That's what the Morpho V2 is doing. 2.5%. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, there are no harvests now. It's the deleveraging. So basically, we should see between like 0.5% and 2% of TVL generating revenue, depending on how much people are churning and all that. And then, yeah, the intent is to reward people who are in the governance set. So if you are staking in what we're calling VQ ALCX, that's where the revenue goes. And specifically, the intent is there are multipliers for one, if you are a delegate within a range. So you're a delegate with a minimum amount of ALCX delegated to you, but no more than a certain amount, you'll get like a multiplier on your rewards. And that's just to encourage active delegation, and also make sure no one's getting too centralized with that. And then the other aspect is if you are actively voting, either you are voting in proposals or through a delegate, your voting power is being used, you get a multiplier as well. So essentially you can just stake and be part of the security, get some portion of revenue. But if you're participating in governance, or either through voting or through delegating to someone, or you are acting as an active delegate who's voting, there will be some revenue there. And the exact nature of that is we have an approach fully defined that works, but we need to do some more like economic incentives analysis, because there's just a lot of thoughts about like inverse incentives and making sure incentives are aligned with a system like this.
Koala, want to be respectful of your time. We're at an hour now. What else is on the horizon, or maybe what's been the biggest surprise over the last year of like kind of this market starting to turn? Where's Alchemix riding the wave on this? Have you guys been approached by any treasury companies? Are there people out there that are kind of looking for opportunities with Alchemix to, grow the pie, so to speak?
Yeah, I think the V3 design has enabled a lot more conversations. Obviously, a lot of them are soft commits because we just don't have a live protocol yet.
Right.
But especially this fixed yield transmuter case, we've talked to some on-chain dApps and other companies about stuff like that, how they might deploy to V3. I think just having this fixed yield opportunity is just this new thing that a lot of people are interested in. And then just the higher leverage. I mean, people want leverage.
Yeah.
So the last year has been interesting because, like, frankly, for the last 2 years, we've been so focused on V3, we just cut the marketing budget for V2. And so it's been really nice to start to ramp that back up and be able to talk V3 with people. Especially because there are a lot of people like Logri who used V2 and V1 back in the day and just left because ultimately it got replaced by better options in DeFi. So we're hoping
turned into an LP eventually. I just
became an LP, which is great too. But we have we're excited to kind of show people what we've been working on kind of quietly the last 2 years, and we're very lucky as a protocol to have runway where we weren't against this like deadline where we were like, we're going to run out of money if we don't do this in a year or something. We were able to take our time with it and try to get it right. And so, the last year, I'm so focused on Alchemix V3 that I like follow the narratives, but I don't chase them. And that's something I think you have to do as a builder. Is you don't build for the current narrative, you build for the best system of what your goal is. And then you be ready to hop on whatever narrative emerges that matches with that. And so I think with all these treasury companies and stuff, I think we've just built a system with a lot of good yield opportunities. And so we have 3 different things we can sell into 3 different narratives.
If in case I missed it, was there a hard date for V3?
No hard date. We have a final audit with Immunify scheduled for October 14th. It was October 6th. We just pushed it a week to just cross our I's, dot our T's, because with these audit contests, if you don't set your scope perfectly, you get a lot of garbage. But if you set it well, you get a lot of good results. So we're going to do a final audit October 14th. Goal is to launch before the end of the year. Besides like the final audit, the only other task is just figuring out the migration of Alchemix V2 to Alchemix V3, but we've already spec'd that, and it doesn't look like a difficult thing to do. We're just really excited to get this thing live, keep talking about it, and hopefully just help people kind of understand these opportunities to the point they feel comfortable with them, and feel kind of the same peace of mind that we've felt designing it.
How large is the Alchemix team currently? Not in terms of weight, but numbers of people.
Yeah, like 4,000. Yeah, I think we're at around we're at probably 13 full-time contributors.
Fantastic.
And then maybe another half dozen part-time contributors.
Any career opportunities for people? Are you hiring?
Not currently. We hired like crazy this year because again, we finally had a product worth selling again.
Gotcha.
So we've grown. We've hired 2 new Solidity developers this year. Grew our UX team as well this year. Hired an official business development person for the first time, because that was always just someone's secondary role. And also, like, Alchemix started with such a bang with V1 and V2 that it just kind of sold itself. And so now it's been kind of fun being like, okay, now we actually have to do the business development ourselves. But let's figure out how to do that. And so having a proper person in that role is nice.
What conferences are on the schedule for your team?
We had someone at Token 2049 just now. We usually have a pretty big cohort at ETH Denver. That's been a traditional.
There we go. That's what I want to hear. Yeah, bingo, right there.
We all meet up. Yeah, we might be doing something big there. We're still discussing. We usually host an event at ETH Denver.
Well. So I do barbecue out there every year. Maybe I should come help provide food.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, we usually get a big house and just all hang out. And
I bring the smokers. I drive them in. I drive them in from Kansas City. I smoke.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah, we did a Meow Wolf last year. I was trying to get Casa Bonita this year, but all the companies with a lot of money booked that out pretty in advance. But yeah, we got ETH Denver. Yeah, it should be good. I should mention with regards to opportunities, we do have a grants program. We've paid out around 100,000 to date. We ran that most of last year. Probably in the last year, we were pretty active with it. In the last 3 months, we put it on pause just because we didn't want to pay for projects for V2 when we were going to replace it with V3. But after V3 goes live, we are definitely going to have funds available for people who want to build cool stuff on top of Alchemix V3. That grant program is through Questbook. I can share a link somewhere that can get shared somewhere. But after V3 goes live, take a look at our grants page. And we've had some pretty cool grants come through in the past, such as a self-repaying debit card, self-repaying ENS domains, where they'll just like automatically renew your ENS through Keepers when it's going to expire by minting an Alchemix loan off your position. A lot of cool use cases like that will need people who want to either rebuild the V2 use cases for V3 or think of other cool ways to integrate Alchemix V3 into stuff.
So I went to the docs on the Alchemix website. I went to where did I go? Utilities. Or did I hit the user docs? And I went down. Where did I see links and resources? And then I clicked on grants program. And then that brought us to alchemix.questbook.app.
Yeah, apparently we have like $1 billion in the multisig, according to that.
$1 billion. Nice.
Yeah, and I'll say the utilities page you went to, actually, most of those were prior grant projects.
Okay, gotcha.
So that's a good way to see what other, like the self-repaying ENS, the Alchemix stats tool, an educational site. Deep dive into Alchemix, like all of these are past grant projects that have been really useful for either users or just internally for us to do our jobs and stuff. So yeah, that's a good way to see what other people have built. Typically, grant projects are a mix of front end and back end work, one or the other or both. But there's also opportunities to do educational work as well.
Excellent. Any final thoughts that you want to share before we move on to the second half of the ball game?
No, thank you so much for having me on. I listened to a few of the podcasts this week too, and I'll definitely be listening again. Those were fun to watch. And you always get pulled so many directions in crypto, but I always enjoy when I find some time to read the subreddit. So and occasionally post.
Yeah, we've got one hell of a good community. A lot of us were born on our Ethereum and our ETH trader, and then we became ETH Finance, and And now we closed ETH Finance, and now the team has moved over to the daily general discussion on our Ethereum, which is sweet because our Ethereum used to be strictly technical, no price talk. And we said, hey, we want to come in and run our daily over there because the daily was the only thing we had. And we're like, let's just marry the two together. We'll keep the place nice and clean, basically doubled the moderator size and tried to.
Nice. That makes sense.
Yeah, and our Ethereum is popping again. It's fun.
Yeah, I didn't want to say the subreddit name because I was like, is it ETH Finance or Ethereum? But that makes sense that it's merged now.
Yeah.
Maybe one more closing note because
Sure.
I kind of always like to bring this up. But I have a pinned tweet from an article from, I think, Business Insider or something. It was kind of someone who had forayed into crypto with a lot of economic knowledge and just gave a really good summary of what it was. And just my call to anyone building in crypto, thinking of ideas, is just if you're creating if you're creating a protocol where everyone in the protocol has to be paying attention every day to do whatever they're doing to earn money, like you're just creating a PvP economic system. It's just you're creating a casino at that point. That's not helping anybody.
Yeah.
You should always try to identify at least one use case where people are going to actually benefit from this in the real world, in their personal finances, where they don't have to like be a degen in the trenches every day. And so that's kind of the DeFi mullet where when you build a protocol, you should have at least one side that's very simple, short in the back. And if you need a bunch of degen shit in the front, if you need a bunch of degen shit in the back to make that all happen so that people can actually get a benefit, you're good. But try to create stuff that isn't just daily degen abstract claims on abstract claims. Because I want to see crypto actually help people.
I like what you said earlier. We don't want to create a casino for the sake of creating a casino. We want to add value beyond that. It's funny enough.
TradFi is a casino.
It is in a way, casino. Yeah.
But it creates safe places for people to put their money. It creates interest. Like obviously, it's not as safe as we want the money. It's not as high interest as people deserve. But it ultimately is creating ways for people to more easily start businesses, things like that. And so we should be targeting those things when we build in crypto too. Very
good. All right. Well, LogrisTheBard from tokenomicsexplained.com helping us out on the technical interview side. Koala from Alchemix, thank you so much. You're free to hang out if you want. If you got some time, we move into the second part of the show where I read Reddit so you don't have to. And we always invite our guests to stick around, be a color commentator. I'd never read any of these submissions ahead of time. These people have earned a spot on our Weekly Doots. And if you gotta head out, you can just do an Irish goodbye.
Yeah.
And
I got 15 minutes.
You got 15 minutes? Let's go.
Yeah, I got 15 minutes.
All right. Let's get right into it. All right, we're going to get right into the Daily Doots. Weekly Doots live stream is all about showcasing the best of the week from the daily general discussion on our Ethereum. This is a read-along reaction series. If you want to join, go to dailydoots.com, designed and produced by our very own Hani Abu. Big thanks to Tricky Troll for capturing and curating each of these days' Doots, and the A-Word for curating this most beloved weekly list. Make sure you subscribe to us wherever you're watching us right now, and you can always visit dailydoots.com. And if you know anybody at all that wants a piece of this action, send them my way. All right, here we go. We're going to go straight into the rich list for this week. Tied at 10th and 9th place, Aiden Cairo, Ethical Trade at 118, Crypto Currency at 126, JS Tears at 129, Hani Abu at 134, Tricky Troll 163, Benito 2030 at 176, Super Fizz at 231, LogrisTheBard climbing up 240, and Harard at the top of the list at 269, absolutely smashing it week in and week out. We have a total of 1,256 duders that have made this list at least one time. Pretty awesome. Pretty darn awesome. Upcoming events: Prague, October 11th, October 18th through November 15th. Edge, Patagonia, October 24th through the 26th. Encode, London, November 17th through the 22nd. Dev Connect in Buenos Aires, Argentina, a place I'd like to go eat some meats and do some smoking down there and be awesome. Let's see. I think we got most everything done. Got our upcoming. All right, time to go to the weekly roundups. Let's see. Morning roundup. Here we go. Professor Strangelove chimes in Ethereum. The price of 44.79.82, and Alex is Kef at 0.037 on the old ratio. Our weekly haiku, courtesy of JS Tiers, swift integration, Ethereum migration, value creation. How does he do it, JS Tiers? How does he do it? This dude's been writing. Did you know this, Koala? JS Tiers has been writing a weekly haiku, actually a daily haiku.
I saw that. Yeah, I saw that on the couple I watched.
Do you know who he is? He's the organizer for ECC over in Paris. I'm like shocked that he's able to do this for us every day. Our shit post of the week by Danny Lost a Fan, because we always like to save the best for first. Your shit post reads, we got the Lubin and the kids. We got the Tom Lee and his date, D-A-T-E. We all get mad. We all get late. Looks like somebody forgot about us standing on the corner waiting for the 5K bus. How does he do in this shit post of the week? Great job. Now to kick off the rest of the list for this week, the Moon Dance Kid covers Vanguard. Vanguard cozying up to crypto while user crypto currency sheds light on how they got here. Moon Dance for this week. Ooh, I got to reset my res file. Let's see what it says. Duder 13 for the week. Crypto currencies in the top 10. All right, Moon Dance Kid writes, Vanguard, the world's second largest asset manager with 10 trillion or some amount of annual is capitulating and will be offering their clients access to crypto ETFs due to client demand. Probably nothing. Crypto Currency does a quote. Vanguard CEO Salim Ramji, a 10-year BlackRock veteran, oversaw the launch of BlackRock's wildly successful Bitcoin ETF, IBIT. Since taking the helm at Vanguard last year, many wonder if he will take a page from his former boss, Larry Fink's plate. And Crypto Currency goes on. Vanguard just changed leadership from anti-crypto CEO to a pro-crypto CEO. So, of course, this means they stop what the old CEO wanted and start with what the new CEO wants. No capitulation here. That being said, the decision to restrict self-directed accounts from purchasing crypto ETFs was idiotic in the first place. No shit, there's, quote, strong client demand, unquote. It's actually insane that Vanguard, famous for being the number one most financially stable and ideologically consistent brokerage in the world, is flip-flopping on their stance on crypto 1 year after the next. The only force powerful enough to get Vanguard to do a 180 on key policy like this, which they've never done in the history of the company, is a Wall Street establishment that, one, fudded crypto and made it hard to buy, and two, loaded up their bags and are ready to pump it now after shaking the retail out. There you go. Great job. Great job. All right, user Greg Foley shares a great TradFi media article. Greg Foley this week is a duder number 10. The race to rewire Wall Street. Is Ethereum the safest bet? All right, that's the title of a piece. It's a good piece on Forbes based on an interview with Danny Ryan. Hey, we know that name around here. He seems to be an effective evangelizer. I agree. I'm not going to read the article, but the link is located at dailydoots.com. In fact, I bet it's paywalled. It's a Forbes article, huh? Yeah, I gotta subscribe. Yeah, there it went. Boom. Okay. All right. User Departed Quantity explains the many ways in which Solana is barely decentralized, and user Numerous Ruin 4947 delivers more centralization numbers. I always love dunking on Solana. Come on. Let's do it. Duder number 1 for the week. That's right. Departed Quantity is our first time duder on this weekly show. It's not just 400 terabytes. How about more centralization risks? Around 65% of the Solana supply is owned by the foundation and VCs. I had no idea it was that high. That's crazy. Solana validators need to be located in a data center in order to meet its performance requirements. More specifically, the 10 gigabits dedicated symmetrical link. What? You have to have 10 up and 10 down to run a Solana thingy?
Yeah, which is your standard, like, fiber optic connection type deal. like Ziply Fiber. You buy a corporate plan for that, and you cannot possibly run a data center from home. Like it's not sold to you.
That's insane. Go ahead, Koala.
I just said I wish I had 10 gigs.
If you want to go and sit in a commercial zone with a Ziply Fiber hookup that costs you $10,000 a month, you can. That is something for sale.
I wish I had it for free, is what I should have.
Maybe buy it with a self-repaying loan.
Yeah, exactly.
10 gigabits per second. That's crazy.
How dare you?
All current validators are part of the Solana delegation program, where each validator has a portion of their stake supply that is owned by the foundation. It is estimated that for a validator to break even, it costs about $14 million. Solana is planning on relying heavily on Starlink to achieve its 150 millisecond finalization target, as a current worldwide ping is closer to 250 millisecond.
I will say one thing on Solana is I do love dunking on Solana, but I at least appreciate that they're trying something different, even if I don't think it will succeed. Because there are just so many L1s that are just like the same as Ethereum, and just like, why are you even building this? So I'll at least give them that. They're always trying something different, and more power to them for that. But there are issues.
Solana's current account model, where all state is stored. This is Numerous Ruin adding to the discussion. Solana's current account model, where all state is stored on-chain and indefinitely replicated across validators, has delivered simplicity, security, and composability. However, by mid-2025, this model has produced significant challenges. A 500 gigabyte live state, a 400 plus terabyte unpruned ledger, high validator hardware costs, and unsustainable rent fees for developers. Without intervention, the state growth will threaten network decentralization, reducing developer accessibility, and degrade Solana's competitive edge as a high-performance blockchain. I got a question. Well, let me finish here. Running a Solana validator requires the following: more than 384 gigabytes of RAM, high-speed NVMe storage, which has to be 2 times 3.84 terabyte enterprise drives. Good God. A monthly cost of $500 to $1,000, excluding redundancy. The effective validator landscape skewed toward data centers and professionals, limiting decentralization. Okay, so when it says and degrades Solana's competitive edge as a high-performance blockchain, does a high-performance competitive blockchain need 100% uptime to be considered high performance and competitive? I ask you.
No, that's a reliability stat, not a performance stat, right?
Oh, thank you.
You could say anything's a type of performance, but yeah, I mean, even Bitcoin hasn't had 100% uptime, right? They've had a rollback at some point. 100% uptime over 10 years is just an impressive stat. Like Amazon doesn't hit those numbers, right? They've had an Netflix on. Netflix had a huge outage on them on Christmas Eve. Very famous, right? 100% uptime is just an incredible stat over 10 years for something that is a global network. But in terms of performance, they're talking like,
I see.
Yeah, what is the time to finality? But then you have to ask, what does finality mean? Because I heard they went and overnight patched a smart contract for an application. Yes, maybe they were fixing a critical bug, but how final was the write and the state data if overnight they can get on their Discord and then decide to change it all, right? What does finality mean? If it means can't be changed, well, then nothing on Solana has been finalized, right? Because they provably can and have changed things.
It makes sense. Yeah, I forgot about the quiet patching. Yeah, the 10 years, 100% uptime is that's mind-boggling, considering the amount of protocol upgrades to go from proof of work to proof of stake was such a transformative thing. It's like swapping engines on the Autobahn at full speed from a semi down to a Fiat, just so much less hardware requirements to do the same work. It's save all that energy too. Does Solana use more electricity than Ethereum? I never thought about that.
Well, it's not. Neither is at a relevant level because they're both proof of stake blockchains.
Gotcha. Okay, that's not
right.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So when you talk about energy use, you're mostly concerned about proof of work blockchains.
Gotcha.
And in a proof of work blockchain, like 99.9% of the energy is spent on civil resistance.
Right.
For proof of stake, the civil resistance comes from the capital. So it's a different mechanism. And we don't usually talk about energy efficiency because it's just not relevant, right? I mean, the big energy hog these days is AI. It's not even Bitcoin.
Yeah, and that's something. That is something. Those data centers that they're building are incredible. All right.
They're making whole like dedicated power plants just for those things, right? I mean, there's data center valleys where they've got both power plants and storage, like massive capacitor banks, as well as all the data centers in a row. Basically, just one street of building after building with tens of thousands of cars each.
Golly. Yeah, if you're an electrician and your job every day is to walk around and hook up stuff with a Faraday cage bodysuit, you're probably dealing with some serious voltage. Yeah, it's pretty nuts out there when they show all the infrastructure. I work part-time for a construction company. I always love walking on the sites and just seeing how things are made. The data centers are like something out of a futuristic movie from the 80s. You know, just they're labyrinths of just, I don't know. They're so complex. It's mind-boggling. All right. Our leader on the Doots board, Harog, keeps us in the loop with ETHOS and DGen 1 phone. All right. Here we go.
I ordered one of these. I'm excited for this.
Yeah, here we go. Harog dropping some bombs here. For those interested in what ETHOS, the Ethereum phone people are doing, they just released their first video of a DGen 1 in action. All right. The video goes through how their wallet works, how they integrate with other dApps, and their own dApp store. The wallet is an account abstraction wallet where the private keys never leave the device, but they have the option to recover a wallet using an NFC card. Hey, that sounds familiar. That's like a Grid Plus thingy. Yeah, one of those maybe, NFC card, which can recover a wallet on a different phone. They also allow to set a backup address which can recover the wallet, but it is not recommended at the moment. To me, it looks like they wrote quite some custom code for this device. The second narrow screen at the bottom has additional information for the transactions, and the dot matrix changes depend on the state of the transaction. They also have a gas account which you can load up and then transact on any chain, even though you do not have any ETH on that chain. Personally, I'm not sure how good the user experience will be using the wallet, but in the video, it looks much smoother than I expected. In general, DGen 1 runs Graphene OS, which is a security-focused fork of Android with all the Google tracking taken out by default, Might be that Freedom Factory, the company behind the DGen 1, tweaked the base Graphene OS a bit to run on their devices, but I have no information if and how much they did that. The first DGen 1 devices have been sent out a few weeks ago, but only to a select few KOLs. What is KOL? Help me, chat.
Key opinion leader.
Key opinion leader, influencer.
Okay, good to know. I didn't get one. I guess I'm not a key.
Where's yours?
I don't have opinions. I only speak in rhetoric. As far as I understand, they are not allowed to talk about the device publicly. No idea why, but I guess that is the reason why almost only still images of people using the device are around and no reviews yet. Maybe they want to maximize the publicity by having a fixed date for first reviews so that more people start ordering the device. Yesterday, the broader public received their first shipping confirmations. Many people who burned their DGen 1 NFT in June have received one. I guess in the next few weeks, we will see the first devices in the hands of users. I am actually curious how usable the interface is. When I got my NFT last December, I honestly did not believe to receive a device and fully expected the project to fail, just because building smartphones can be very hard, especially with all the additional features that they have, such as the second narrow screen and the dot matrix. And then building an additional wallet on top does not make it easier. So I am pretty happy to say with the state of the project and looking forward to getting mine soonish and playing with it. And I've heard that it even can connect using a 56K baud modem. Let's see if it works here. I don't think it's going to work.
Yeah, I have I know a few things about it.
Okay, drop some bombs. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, it seems pretty cool. Basically, this like all-in-one wallet interface you can do degen stuff on, which is great for me because I need like a degen account so that I don't touch my primary funds because most of my stuff's in ETH, but I need to do some degen shit somewhere. And my understanding is that it's pretty good. It's like rough around the edges right now. I think they're like a couple updates away from it being like pretty solid to use. I know some KOLs who've gotten them and played around with them. That's kind of what they told me. I was enough of a KOL to get a 5% discount, not to get a free one early.
Dude, dude, that is the funniest shit I've ever heard.
No,
they don't send you one, but listen,
like,
we're going to take 5% off your French fries. That's great.
Yeah, no, so like Scoopy, the Alchemix co-founder, he's a big on Twitter, so he got one for free, and I just rode his coattails like, hey, what do you got for me? And they're like, here's your discount code, go away. So he already has his, and he's posted a little bit on Twitter about it. If you want to learn, like you can look at Scoopy's Twitter account. But yeah, it seems like a really cool if you just need to do like some crypto on the go and with like an isolated kind of degen account that's going to be a lot more secure than like a hot wallet. So
I'm all for it. I'm the kind of guy that I would buy one and never open it. So the part of the reason I bought it is because I think it's going to be like the Solana phone where there's probably going to be some airdrops to it. So I think there's a good chance it pays itself off. Not to the point I'm not going to buy like 10 and be like, this can't go tits up or anything. But I think it'll be a fun thing to play around with, potentially useful. And I think there's a good chance you just get some airdrops that end up paying for the price of the phone anyway. So it's really neat. Hardware is hard. I worked for Grid Plus for a while, and I mean, I just listening to the engineer meetings.
Their favorite at Alchemix. Everyone loves Grid Plus at Alchemix.
Oh, you do? Oh man, yeah, that's great.
We have a lot of Grid Plus users.
Okay, well,
that's what I'm using.
I don't know if you knew this, but I did all the video work for them once upon a time.
Oh, awesome.
On their YouTube channel. So yeah, I'm such a fan. They're, I'm partial. They're US based and engineering's here. So trying to support, and they're in Austin, Texas. And that's kind of a fun town to visit, but yeah.
Want to be conscious of your time, Koala. You said you had until 12:30.
Yeah, I do have to run. I just saw the degen one and I was like, I got to stick around for that.
That's been a great conversation. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks so much, man.
There's some useful clips there for you, to help describe these things.
Sure, appreciate. Yeah, thank you so much for the questions. I posted this in the Alchemix server, but it continues to amaze me how quickly your Logri can just grok new DeFi and financial systems. It's very impressive. I appreciate all the questions, and it's really good practice for me too, because this is kind of the start of the podcast circuit and advertising this thing, so a lot of room for refinement. So yeah, thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, let's talk offline on room for refinement, because I think I get it, and I've read your post, and your post does not convey some things very clearly. So we have some room for polish.
Yeah, I can share the initial docs with you too as well.
Sure.
Well, thanks so much, Koala. Koala from Alchemix joining us today. Thank you so much for your time, and we hope to see you at ETH Denver.
See you there.
All right, good deal. Awesome sauce, as the kids say. So yeah, the DGen 1 phone looks pretty dope. I kind of want one. I mean, I like collecting stuff like that. I think that, but I'd use it too. I mean, maybe buy 2 of them, Try it out. I love it. Hardware is hard. Anytime hardware comes out in the crypto space, it's always fun. You get to see the early days, We're still early. All right, user Rhythm of ETH. Here we go. Shares the EF's Project Mirror 2025. User Rhythm of ETH this week is a duder number 62. Has anyone here already shared Project Mirror 2025? It's an EF Commission sentiment analysis report started in March and finished in June. The EF is releasing it now. It's a pretty brutal self-criticism play to share these so publicly, especially when ETH is now performing better and Ethereum is on a good streak. 60 plus people were interviewed from many crypto and non-crypto backgrounds, including regulators. There's one literally about Vitalik being too nerdy to be the face of Ethereum. Huh? I'm softening the wording here, to be honest. Yeah. We're not dunking on Vitalik. We're not dunking on Vitalik on this.
And he's not just writing about Ethereum, he's writing about collusion systems, crypto economics.
I love it. Flames Rise Higher took some profits and starts a discussion about how it's often the right thing to do. Flames Rise Higher is a duder number 2. Well, after holding since early 2017, I finally sold some of my ETH during this most recent dip to put some money down on a house. I'd like to think any gains from here on out are because of this decision. Feel free to thank me for my sacrifice anytime. It was wholly unselfish. I did it all for you. The crab must be vanquished. Flames Rise Higher. Congrats on the home down payment purchase. You just sold some. You got a long way to go, bud. And yeah, just ride the hog. And salute you and you and yours in your new home. That's wonderful to hear, actually. And yeah, that's a long commitment. 8 years now to be in. And good on you. All right, Harog getting a double weekly. User Harog gives us a debrief on how the Fusaka upgrade went on testnet. The Haleshki testnet just got its Fusaka upgrade a few minutes ago. Everything looks okay, at least from my perspective. I lost a few pairs, as expected, but seem to be on the same chain as others. According to the Dora Beacon Chain Explorer, I get the joke, that's funny. There are more than 75% of all validators on the same chain, so we might finalize in the next 10 minutes or so. If the testnet keeps stable over the next few hours, that is a very good first indication of the Fusaka upgrade that is potentially ready for mainnet. Here's an update. Paratosh from ETH Panda Ops team said that the upgrade looks good on first glance. There's some smaller issues, mostly operators not updating in time, but nothing worrisome. They are also looking at some orphan blocks to try and see what the cause might be. Haleshki also just finalized, which is great. The ETH Panda Ops team do their EIPs testing on Haleshki now, and we will hear from them again in a few hours to see if everything works as expected. Very good. Thanks for the update, Harog. Yep, good stuff. User Nick Sorakish rounds out our list for the week, wraps up all the latest core developments in her checkpoint number 6 posts. You can find that at blog.ethereum.org. The checkpoint number 6 is out. It's an easy peasy but bullish, unlike our easy peasy, if you know, guide to the state. All core devs covering August and September. If there's any confusing terminology or anything that makes it not accessible to a regular crowd, please let me know. I want this blog post series to be an easy read, and that is coming from Nick Sorakish herself. And go give her a review, give her some feedback, and represent the Mavericks well out there. She does a great job, and I'm so glad. It was so glad to see her grow up in the industry and get this job at the EF. It's awesome. One of us. All right, Logar, you got anything else? All right, I'm gonna assume not. So make sure that
nope, good for me.
Good for you. Thanks so much for your help today, Logri. The Bard Tokenomicsexplained.com. Thanks for subbing and smashing some bells around here. Stick around after the live stream because we continue the party in the hotel lobby on Discord for a bonus hour of popcorn. It's a fun place to let loose when the parents aren't watching on YouTube. Hi, Mom. On behalf of the Ethereum Daily General Discussion and the EV Mavericks DAO, my name is JT. Cheers and big hugs from Kansas City.